So, before we begin today, I wanted to explain something. The reason I started making these videos. So, there are a couple reasons. One is I've warmed my hands at the human dumpster fire that is Lucas Werner for many years. And the second reason is because I've decided to make videos in order to better learn and understand Adobe Premiere so I can use it in my professional life. And, that works as a flimsy pretext to poke Lucas with a stick. So, I do try to take it seriously sometimes, Today, I thought, you know what? I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm not going to wing it. I'm going to write a script. I'm gonna really go all out on this one, right? But then I had another thought, which was, what if I don't do that and I start drinking? So that's what I went with, and this is probably going to be the worst video I've ever made. I don't know, but I've had too much to drink to care. So got my favorite 12-year-old rum here, which means it's just old enough for Lucas to want to fuck it. So I should probably watch out for that, but here we go.
Well, okay, the famous motto of the atheists and scientists, we invented science. Please, Socrates did not invent the scientific method.
No, he didn't. Okay, there's so many problems with just that one sentence. No, he didn't. He wasn't a scientist. He was a philosopher, you ineffectual fuck. 2, he didn't have any interest in science. 3, he wasn't an atheist. He was put on trial for impiety, but that doesn't mean atheism. That means not giving proper reverence to the gods because, he had all these different questions, and those charges were probably trumped up if he existed at all, which there's no evidence he did. All we have are the writings of his students. We have no physical evidence of Socrates. So, I mean, he's kind of the philosophical equivalent of Jesus in that way, and it doesn't really matter. Like, even if he didn't exist, it wouldn't matter. Like, the things he said are still important and interesting. And I got $1,000 saying that Lucas saw Socratic method or Socrates and method in the same sentence and just assumed it was the scientific method. And since I know you're listening, Lucas, the Socratic method is not the scientific method. They're not even related. Socratic methods are very important, but it's not about science.
Well, whatever. Agnostics, quit riding our coattails. You know that we're bigger than you and better. We don't hate you. We just want you to come along with us. You know what I'm saying? Ask those damn questions, but do it as an anti-theist or an atheist. Come with us. We're not coming with you anymore.
It's endlessly amusing that Lucas doesn't understand that agnostic and atheist are not mutually exclusive. Because they're not. You have agnostic atheism, you have agnostic theism, you have Gnostic and Gnostic atheism, Gnostic theism. I mean, the word agnostic refers to knowledge, and atheism refers to belief, right? Theism, same thing. So, yeah, that's not how that works.
So Christians, I have to admit, I have a bit of a problem with you. You're not acting in a manner that says that you're actually Christians. Atheists are more Christian than you. Let me give you an example. John 13:34 says to love everybody. Luke 12:15 says don't be greedy. Matthew 6:24 says choose God or money to worship, because you can't do both. You're going to end up loving one and resenting the other. And Ephesians 4:29 says don't even think about being a gossip. Now do you see why I'm an atheist?
No, I don't. You're actually terrible at being a fucking atheist. It's amazing. I think you've referred to yourself as talented before, and I think this is the one talent you have. Just vomiting up bullshit and not realizing it's bullshit. Very talented at that. But yeah, that's not a good reason to be an atheist. People don't follow their particular creed. That has nothing to do with whether or not a God exists. Let me use an example, which you can probably identify with. You claim to be a communist. And I'm not going to get into the politics of that. I don't give a shit. But you claim to be a communist. And I could point to the USSR, Stalin, and Mao, right? The atrocities they've committed. And you'd say, oh, well, they weren't real communists, right? They did it wrong, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool, bro. But just because people in that group did things you found to be antithetical to what they believe doesn't mean what they believe was necessarily wrong in your view. So you're using special pleading based on communism, like for communism specifically, but not for any kind of God. Now, there's a whole bunch of reasons to reject the claims of theists. I'm not going to get into them because I don't fucking care what people believe. But, I mean, I think even you can understand it at this point.
Human beings don't have souls. If they did, they wouldn't be so attracted towards money.
Okay, I freely admit that this isn't actually very related to atheism. He doesn't even mention atheism in this video. It's only tangentially related. I completely understand that, but who gives a fuck? I just want to address the whole humans must necessarily not have a soul because they don't conform to my viewpoint. That's basically what Lucas is saying, and that's utterly fucking ridiculous and stupid. And wholly without any kind of evidence. For a guy who says he demands evidence, he never actually demands evidence. It's amazing how often that's the case, and he never notices, right? It's bizarre how he never notices.
Don't tell me that's human nature, because as soon as you remove capitalism, you have an intelligent species that would behave like the rest of the animals.
It's a weird hill to die on, bro. Fairly easily defeated. Just want to point out something. Okay, if you say if you removed capitalism, people wouldn't act that way, right? So by your logic, removing capitalism necessarily makes it so people don't have any interest in money. Okay? Really easy to beat. Let me just point out there was a time before capitalism. I think your argument just died.
So if I'm edgier, I will attract swishier women, which is more attractive to me. I like more feminine women than masculine women. If you don't be an agnostic, because agnostics are the biggest pussies on the planet.
Setting aside all the nonsense in this video about women specifically, I'd just like to point out I am an agnostic atheist, as I've said, and I'm also a trained boxer. But, fucking tell me more about how, I'm a pussy, dude.
In the Bible, God created Satan. Why doesn't he just kill Satan off? Save us the trouble. No. He's got to continue with the drama so people die to come to his kingdom, which is against like a lot of leftist ideas like direct democracy.
Yeah, because there have never, ever in the history of mankind been any totalitarian left-wing regimes. We know that for a fact. That's leftists have never done anything wrong or been dictators or anything.
What I don't understand is how agnostics get away with saying that they're the most reasonable position.
Really? You don't understand how people can say, hey, I don't know this for a fact. I have no evidence to support my position, but I reject the claims that people have given me that don't have evidence. You don't see how that's reasonable? Really? That's Bizarre.
The only thing they can really say is, well, look at, Bill Gates. He's a very powerful man, and he's an agnostic, and he has all the money he can muster up, and probably could get like any babe he wanted if he wanted to. He could put his kids in the best schools. He created software, or at least pumped out software that helps a lot of people.
I'd just like to point out that I've never met an agnostic who is like, you know how we can prove that we're right? Bill Gates exists. That's not what people do when they argue, unless you're Lucas Werner, I guess.
Out there trying to solve world hunger with his philanthropy.
Philanthropy, not philanthropy. Philanthropy. Maybe I should also make a video of just words Lucas can't pronounce, because that video would be like an hour long. Might be worth it. If anyone wants to see that, let me know. I will go through his archives and find all the words that Lucas doesn't understand or can't pronounce.
What I don't really understand with agnostics is like, if they're the most reasonable position, why haven't they all gotten together and solved all the world problems yet? Why aren't they each like sitting there with like a pile of like $50 million and 50 babes or 50 dudes or 50 whatever that they want in their house or something?
Oh man. Yeah, that's an excellent question. Never thought about it. Let's let me ask a different question, right? The Socratic method, we're gonna introduce you to that. Different question. If anti-theism is the most reasonable position, why haven't all of you gotten together and solved all the world's problems? Why don't you have a pile of $50 million and, like 40 bitches if you're so reasonable, Lucas? Could it be that the fucking world doesn't work that way? Is that possible? What do you think? I think that might be it. Who knows?
Agnostics want to get married and have kids and have sex and date just like any other, except maybe asexuals.
Hi, I'd like to just pipe up right here and point out that asexuals also want to get married. I mean, some of them don't, sure, but asexual doesn't mean you don't want a romantic partner. It just means you're not interested in sex. It's actually in the name. That should clue you in, right? That should be like everyone should like anyone who can English, I think, should like be able to figure that one out. You should be able to sort that one out, Lucas. Apparently you passed that class. I'm pretty sure it was a remedial class, but you still passed it.
But agnostics aren't the most reasonable position, because if you talk shit about agnosticism, don't they usually get kind of angry? That's not reasonable.
Yeah. I sound pretty angry right now, right? I think I do. This is me pretty worked up, I think. Yeah, and luckily, Lucas has never ever shown anger at someone talking shit about him. So clearly, he practices what he preaches. So and he probably doesn't like the term saying, practice what you preach when referring to him. Like he doesn't like that phrase because atheism. But hey.
But scientists have made the discovery that particles can move faster than the speed of light, and when they do, they infrared shift, which means they move backwards in time.
Literally no part of that has happened, so far as I'm aware. The only time that they ever believed they found particles that move faster than the speed of light, they actually discovered that that wasn't true. That was, the problem of, I think it was a poorly connected cable that gave a false reading. And they realized that because A, the results couldn't be duplicated, and B, they were using a satellite to measure the speed. And a satellite is it relies on a relativistic system because time moves slower for the satellite than it does for the Earth, and it has to take that into account. So you can't actually, use a relativistic system and then disprove relativity. It doesn't actually work. And I should point out that just because something can move faster than light, that wouldn't prove that there's no God. It's not like, there are people out there who are like, hey, Jim, why you believe in God? Oh, nothing's ever moved faster than light, so that does it for me. That's the one. That's the crux of my argument right there. Oh, guess what, Jim? These particles over here. Oh, fuck. That's undone all my years in the fucking like catechism or whatever. I don't fucking know what fucking Catholics do. Okay, but you get the point.
So you can fathom of ideas where quantum fluctuation appeared out of nothingness, because if you create a vacuum, a true vacuum in space with no time or light or anything substance, energy pops out of nowhere.
Okay, literally none of that is evidence against the idea of a God. There are plenty of arguments that you can make for why you would reject the existence of a God. But that isn't fucking one of them. Even if you proved that universes can come from nothing, that would only mean that you don't require God for the creation of the universe, which is fine. I mean, that you can use that against the argument that some theists make that, oh no, well, why is there something rather than nothing? Must be God. You can use it against that, but it doesn't actually prove there is no God. You can't prove a negative. So, yeah.
But agnostics are always touting this line about how they're the most reasonable position, and they'll often quote Socrates: the wise man is the man who says that he knows nothing. Well, that's not very reasonable, because you could always just go to Google and look it up, or you can go to a library back in Socrates' time and look it up.
I actually forgot that he mentioned Socrates in this video, so it's kind of accidental that everything linked back to what he was saying before. But leave it to Lucas to not understand what a quote which I think is pretty straightforward, and to think that you just look it up on Google. Nope, because that's not what he's saying. What he's talking about is understanding your own limitations and limits of your own knowledge, and he's talking about recognizing that you don't know everything, and that what you do think you know can be proven wrong. It's a quote about understanding your own thinking, and understanding that you shouldn't find any position as being completely and utterly 100% solid and immune to criticism. It's something you should always look at your ideas and your opinions and your thoughts and realize that you could be wrong.
But you could say kind of that there's been martyrs for agnosticism. Again, Socrates was an agnostic. The trial of Socrates, they called him an atheist, and he kind of wobbled on that, and he said that if that's what I am, that's what I am.
Socrates was not a fucking agnostic, and he wasn't accused of being an atheist. He was accused of being impious, not giving a proper reference. I've said this fucking before, but fuck, man.
I did not read the trial of Socrates. I have not read that yet. I have not read Plato's Republic or anything like that.
Fucking excellent. We've reached the Lucas Werner equivalent to, I didn't read the story, but here's what I think about the headline.
But my recollect of it is that Socrates was a martyr for the scientific method.
Hi, how are you? My name is Lucas Werner, and I didn't actually read what we're talking about, but here's what I remember from it. And it bears repeating that he was not a martyr for the scientific method. He didn't even know about the scientific method. The actual scientific method as we know it today was invented by Galileo. So this is a bit after Socrates, just like a little bit of time passed between them. Socrates was not a fucking scientist. He didn't give a shit about science. He was a philosopher.
Which is really a martyrdom for agnosticism. And they'll say, well, science is an agnostic thing.
Science is an agnostic thing insofar as it doesn't make claims or test any supernatural. Like, it doesn't try to prove God. It doesn't give a shit. It's not about that. It doesn't care.
With Lawrence Krauss years and years ago, like a decade ago, saying that he was an anti-theist, I just don't really see how agnosticism is the most reasonable position.
Who gives a shit about what Lawrence Krauss does? Like, he's fine. He's a good scientist as far as I know, but who gives a fuck? Like, Lucas likes to fucking use a lot of logical fallacies, and this is an appeal to authority. Who fucking cares, right? Lawrence Krauss, he's a good scientist, but who fucking cares what he believes? Fucking Isaac Newton, great scientist, probably the best scientist, most brilliant scientist to ever live. He totally believed in a god. So are we really gonna play the fucking authority game? Because you'll lose.
When we also have anti-theism to fall back on.
Anti-theism isn't a fucking fallback, dude. It's an assertion. It's an assertion which can't really be defended. You can try to defend it logically by, claiming that omnipotent beings are necessarily a self-emptying set, which is fine, but it's not really proof. It's just an argument. It's a good argument, sure, but it's not hard proof, because it assumes that a god must necessarily conform to the laws of logic. Which, I mean, if something's omnipotent, it probably doesn't. But yeah, no, it's not a fallback. It's an assertion. It's an assertion for which you have no evidence. It's saying there are no gods, and I know this for a fact, which you don't. You believe it, but you don't actually know it.
If you're so reasonable, agnostic, why don't you have $5 billion in the bank right now and 50 girls wanting to fuck you in your apartment? Please.
Okay, I'm gonna set aside the whole, if you're so reasonable, why don't you have all the money in the world? Because clearly he doesn't fit that requirement. He just foisted onto everyone. Okay, and I'm gonna set aside the whole, 50 girls wanting to fuck you thing. If I had $5 billion, why the fuck would I have an apartment? Like, I might own some apartment buildings. It's probably a good investment opportunity, but like, why the fuck would I have a fucking apartment if I have $5 billion? And why would I have 50 women in a tiny little fucking apartment to fucking trying to fuck me? That's like, that's not even nice, right? That's not even, that's not being courteous to your guests, right? Who packs 50 people into an apartment? It's fucked up, man. So that's the end of the video, but like, I just wanted to include that fucking, I just spent like 2 minutes trying to figure out how to spell bourgeoisie, and I'm pretty sure I spelled it like bourgeoisize or something, like Bug size. I don't know, but just thought I'd include that. Bye, everyone.